I left her on read. Twice. Or maybe 3 times. I don't even remember exactly. But she didn't leave me a single follow-up text, and now she's gone. For real. I'm sitting on the corner stool of her favorite little cafe, the one she swears has the best espresso in town, and I can still see her standing there, arms crossed over that perfectly tailored trench coat, hair caught in the low glow of the morning sun, like she belonged to a completely different, calmer world. She glanced at me once, just once, before she drifted toward the door with that faint, knowing smile that made my chest tighten for reasons I can't even begin to explain. I met her 2 weeks ago at the used bookstore down the street from the cafe. I was pretending to look for old science fiction novels, but really, I was watching her. She moved with this quiet certainty, scanning shelves with a little tilt of her head, like she owned every book without needing to touch them. And then she caught me staring. Not in a scolding way, more curious. And I don't know why, but I froze. I finally said something stupid, about a book I had no intention of buying, and she laughed. Just a small laugh, low and warm, like she'd been saving it for someone who deserved it, but maybe she had no idea I was standing there. The sound pulled something up in me, some raw, unrefined part of myself I usually keep locked away. Since then, we've been crossing paths in the tiniest, most mundane ways. Her at the hotel front desk where I deliver packages for work. Me at the repair shop where she dropped a laptop last week. I think she notices the way my hand twitches when I pick up her package, or how my voice falters for a fraction of a second when I hand it over. But she never calls it out. She just smiles, a slow, deliberate smile that makes me want to lean closer and memorize the lines around her eyes. Yesterday, for no reason at all, she handed me a mug of coffee. Not one of those paper ones. No, this was the cafe's little ceramic thing, warm, slightly chipped at the rim. I could feel the heat through the porcelain as I took it, and for a second, neither of us said anything. We just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, breathing the same slightly stale office air. And in that silence, God, I thought maybe something had shifted. A pulse of connection that neither of us could name. I wanted to say something clever, or at least something that would make her look at me the way I was looking at her. But the words got stuck somewhere behind my ribs. So I just nodded, mumbled a thank you, and walked away, carrying more than a coffee mug. And now she's gone. I can't even tell if it's permanent or temporary, but my chest tightens anyway. I replay that small pause over and over in my head, her hand brushing the mug, the briefest flicker of her eyes toward mine, the way she didn't rush me, didn't push me, didn't speak for me. I left her on read, and she left me for real, but the echo of that tiny, shared moment, it keeps whispering, pulling me back into that cafe, back into that quiet corner where she somehow made everything feel like it mattered. I don't know why I can't stop thinking about her hand on the mug. It was another gray afternoon at the repair shop, the kind of light that leaks through dusty blinds and makes everything look smaller than it really is. She showed up with a tablet that had clearly seen better days, her heels clicking lightly against the concrete floor. She didn't smile this time, not at first, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she hesitated at the doorway, as if weighing whether to step inside at all. "Hey," I said, trying for casual. My voice felt too loud, too bright in the low hum of machines and soldering irons. She gave me a tilt of her head, that small, measured gesture that always made me feel like she was deciding if I was worth her attention. "Hi," she said, voice calm, careful. I motioned toward the counter. "Bring it over here. I'll take a look." Her hands were steady as she set the tablet down, but I noticed the faint tremor in her fingers as she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Something about it made me want to reach out, but I didn't. I never knew if she wanted that kind of closeness, or if she'd push me away if I crossed an invisible line. While I worked, she lingered near the window, tracing patterns in the condensation with her fingertips. Every so often, she'd glance at me, and I'd catch her looking tired, pale under the bright shop lights, her eyes carrying the weight of things unspoken. And then, just as suddenly, she'd straighten, pull herself into that elegant posture that reminded me she could carry the world if she wanted. I asked a question about the model, and she answered quickly, almost too quickly, like she wanted to fill the silence. Her laugh came once, soft and abrupt, when I misread the numbers on the back panel. It was brief, almost startled, like she wasn't used to letting anyone hear it. And it hit me, how carefully she measured her moments, how she never let anything linger too long. When the repair was done, I handed the tablet back, our fingers brushing for just a second, a fraction of a heartbeat, and yet it lingered longer than it should have. She caught my gaze then and held it for just a moment too long, long enough that I could see the shadow behind her eyes, the hesitation, the quiet pull she tried to ignore. "You're thorough," she said finally, almost in a whisper, as if the words themselves were heavy. I wanted to ask what she meant. Was it a compliment? A warning? A subtle invitation? She didn't wait for me to respond, slipping the tablet into her bag and stepping toward the door, heels clicking again. I watched her leave, her hand on the handle, pausing for the tiniest fraction of a second before she disappeared into the drizzle outside. And I was left staring at the empty shop, wondering how someone could be so close, so tangible, and yet feel miles away at the same time. Her pause at the door, the way her fingers lingered on the handle, that's the moment I couldn't shake. It was soft, almost accidental, but charged with something I didn't have a name for yet. Something that pulled at me. The rain had started without warning, drumming against the hotel's glass entrance like it was trying to drown out everything else. I was there, finishing up a late delivery shift, when I saw her sitting alone in the lobby, the dim lamp casting soft shadows across her face. She looked smaller somehow, the edges of her coat dampened, hair clinging to her cheeks. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to wait out the storm alone. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting the silence stretch between us, like the air itself was holding its breath. "Hey," I finally said, voice lower than usual, almost afraid to break the fragile tension. She glanced up, and that familiar pause lingered, the one that always makes my stomach twist. Her eyes flickered to mine, then down again, and for a moment I thought I saw something unguarded, something that wasn't meant for anyone else. We walked toward the elevators together, careful steps echoing in the marble hall. I noticed the faint tremor in her hands as she adjusted her scarf, the small furrow of concentration between her brows. She was tired, and yet there was something deliberately poised about her exhaustion, like she refused to let it show too much. "I was going to read in the lounge," she said abruptly, as if to fill the space. I nodded, trying not to lean too close, even though every instinct in me wanted to close the distance. "I can keep you company," I offered softly. She hesitated, and that hesitation, it's what caught me. Something unspoken passed between us, a fragile thread I wasn't supposed to pull. Before anything could move further, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, lips tightening. I caught a name on the screen, someone from her past, someone whose presence made the air heavier in an instant. Her shoulders stiffened, and the warmth I'd been chasing slipped just out of reach. I should take this," she murmured, already stepping back. I wanted to protest, to say that she didn't have to, that I didn't care about the interruptions, that I wanted to just be near her. But I stayed silent, my hands tucked into my jacket pockets, fighting the urge to reach out. The elevator dinged, and the door slid open. She stepped inside, and for a brief, impossible moment, our fingers brushed, barely, almost accidentally, but enough to send a jolt through me that lingered long after the doors closed. I stood in the empty lobby, listening to the rain hitting the glass, trying to steady my heartbeat. That near touch, that fraction of time when proximity meant everything, it was gone now, and all I had left was the memory of what almost happened. I wanted to follow her, to step into that elevator, to say something reckless and true, but I didn't. And now the space between us feels wider, even as I can still feel her there, a ghost against my chest, a pull I can't name. Her hand, brushing mine just before the doors closed. I can't stop thinking about it. The cafe was nearly empty that evening, the hum of the espresso machine and the scrape of chairs on tile louder than usual in the quiet space. She was sitting across from me at the small table by the window, her coat draped over the chair, coffee untouched, eyes fixed on the street outside. I wanted to speak first, to fill the tension with words, but every syllable I imagined sounded wrong. Finally, she broke the silence. Do you ever wonder what we're doing? Her voice was low, hesitant, but it carried across the table with a weight that pinned me in place. I blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? My own voice felt fragile, unsure. She turned to look at me then, really look, and the vulnerability there nearly knocked the breath out of me. This, she said, waving a hand vaguely between us. This back and forth. These moments where we almost, I don't know. It's like we're waiting for something that can't happen. Or maybe we're pretending it can. I swallowed hard, tracing the rim of my coffee cup with a finger. I don't know. I can't stop noticing you. The words sounded lame even to me, but I couldn't take them back. I was exposed, and she saw it. She didn't reply immediately. She just watched me, lips pressed together, fingers tapping the edge of the table. Her eyes softened, but there was that same guardedness I'd been chasing from the first day I met her. And yet now, it felt like she was letting a fraction of herself slip into the space between us. I see it, she whispered finally. You notice everything. The way I move, the way I avoid certain words, the tiredness in my hands. Her gaze dropped to her coffee, fingers tightening around the mug. And I see you noticing me, even when I try not to let you. I wanted to reach across the table, to touch her hand, to tell her it was okay, that I wasn't going anywhere, but I stayed frozen, caught in the gravity of her honesty. Silence stretched, heavy and intimate, and I realized I had been waiting for this for weeks, for someone to finally say aloud what neither of us had dared to admit. She looked up again, eyes glistening, and I swear the room shrank around us. I don't know if this is right, or even fair, but I can't keep pretending it isn't pulling me apart, too. The words hit me like rain against the window, cold and unstoppable. I wanted to say something smart, something comforting, but nothing came. So I just nodded, unable to tear my gaze away from her, feeling the fragility of her honesty and the weight of my own longing mirrored in those eyes. She exhaled slowly, a sound that seemed to carry all the restraint and fear she'd been holding. I don't want to hurt you, she said, almost to herself. But I think I'm already doing it. And in that moment, I realized, whatever this is between us, it's no longer safe to ignore. I can feel it stretching, delicate and dangerous, like a thread that could snap at any second. She sat back, lifting her mug to her lips, and the silence returned, heavier than before. But this time, it wasn't just the quiet of the cafe. It was the quiet of everything unspoken between us. And I couldn't stop thinking, maybe I've already lost her, before anything even started. It was late, later than I usually stay at the cafe, the dim light pooling over the table where we sat with 2 half-drunk lattes. She didn't speak at first, just traced the rim of her cup with a finger, eyes distant. I watched her, hesitant to break the quiet, sensing that something was simmering just beneath the surface. Finally, she exhaled, slow and deliberate. I wasn't always like this, she said, voice low. I wasn't always so careful with people. Her gaze met mine briefly, then flicked down. There was someone years ago. I loved him, and I thought I'd have forever, and then, she stopped, shaking her head slightly, like the words were too sharp to finish. I didn't speak, just nodded. There was nothing I could say yet. I could see the way her fingers clenched the mug, the faint tremor running through her shoulders. He left, she whispered finally. Suddenly, without warning. I never really got over it, though I pretended I did. She paused, staring at the latte in front of her, swirling the foam absent-mindedly. I don't want to go through that again. Something tightened in my chest. I reached for my phone on instinct and flipped it open, showing her a photo I had pulled from a recent delivery, her old apartment building, the corner where she had once told me she used to meet someone. She stared at it for a long moment, recognition softening the lines around her mouth. That's where he used to wait for me, she said quietly, her voice cracking slightly. She looked up, eyes meeting mine with something unspoken, raw. I haven't been back there in years. I try not to remember. But seeing this now, it's like everything I've been holding in it comes rushing back. I wanted to reach across the table, to say something comforting, but the right words escaped me. All I could do was keep my eyes on her, silently offering a presence that didn't intrude, but didn't leave either. Her lips pressed together, and I saw the shadow of vulnerability flicker across her face. She let out a soft laugh, brittle and small, like she was surprised by the emotions bubbling up inside her. I don't usually tell anyone this, she admitted. Not because I don't trust them. I can't. Not easily. The quiet stretched between us, heavy and intimate, carrying the weight of memories, loss, and the subtle acknowledgement of something fragile forming in the space we shared. She finally exhaled, leaning back slightly in her chair, and the movement was almost a surrender. I shouldn't be telling you any of this, she said, voice barely above a whisper. But I guess I did anyway. And in that moment, I realized the shift. She had let a piece of herself slip into my hands, however cautiously. And though we didn't speak another word, the air between us vibrated differently now, charged with something neither of us could name, a fragile thread connecting past heartbreak to the possibility of something new. She sipped her latte, eyes down, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might cry. But then she just looked at me, and in that gaze, I felt the ground move under me, quietly, irrevocably, and entirely unstoppable. Her confession wasn't dramatic. There were no raised voices, no sudden tears. Just a simple, devastating honesty. And I couldn't stop thinking. Maybe everything had changed, and neither of us realized it yet. The rain had stopped by the time I found her again, standing under the flickering street lamp outside the hotel. She looked smaller in the wet light, coat clinging slightly to her shoulders, hair damp and curling against her neck. I wanted to say something that might capture everything I'd been holding in for weeks, but the words felt inadequate. Instead, I just stood there, letting the silence stretch between us. She didn't rush away, and I realized she wasn't afraid to be seen. Not really. Not anymore. We walked slowly toward the small park across the street, the night air cool, but not uncomfortable. Neither of us spoke at first. The city hummed around us, distant car engines and the occasional shout carrying through the damp streets. Yet in that quiet, I felt the weight of everything we hadn't said, every pause, every glance, every nearly touch. She stopped by a bench, slipping off her gloves and letting them hang from her fingers. I noticed how small her hands looked in mine, the delicate strength in the curve of her fingers. My own hand twitched, almost involuntarily, until I finally reached out. Slowly, deliberately, I let my fingers brush hers. She didn't pull away. We sat side by side, neither of us speaking. The space between us was measured, careful, yet it carried all the understanding that words could never hold. I felt the quiet gravity of it, the inevitability of being here together, sharing this fragile, earned connection. "You're still here," she murmured after a long pause, voice soft, almost unformed. "I've never left," I said simply, and it wasn't meant as a declaration, just a fact. The truth had been in my eyes, in the way I lingered, in the quiet attention I had always tried to give her. Her fingers curled slightly into mine, and I felt the subtle warmth, the gentle insistence that this wasn't just a fleeting moment. Her gaze met mine, and there was no need to speak further. Everything we had been dancing around, the longing, the confusion, the past heartbreak, the near misses, collapsed into this small, perfect understanding. We didn't hold hands in the dramatic sense, didn't lean in to confess anything grand. We simply allowed the contact, the presence, the acknowledgement of each other to settle between us. The world outside continued to move, indifferent and loud, but here, on that quiet bench, it felt like the only thing that mattered was the small pressure of her fingers against mine. I think I can stay here," she whispered, more to herself than to me, and I realized that she didn't need to ask permission. I simply stayed, letting the space between us be filled with the quiet gravity of mutual choice. The night deepened, and the glow from the street lamp softened around us. Our shoulders brushed slightly, our fingers entwined by accident or design. I could no longer tell which, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like all the hesitation, all the missed chances, had led to exactly this. No dramatic confessions, no sudden outbursts. Just two people, side by side, acknowledging what had been simmering quietly all along. And that was enough. For the first time, I let myself breathe, because finally, we were here. It's been months since that night on the bench, months since the rain and the quiet, the small brush of fingers that felt like the world tipping slightly towards something real. I still remember it, every fragment, the sound of the city, the damp smell of wet asphalt, the way her coat had smelled faintly of cedar and something indefinably her. We've fallen into a rhythm neither of us predicted, quiet and deliberate. There's no grand declarations, no cinematic gestures, just the way she hums softly while she reads, the way I linger by the doorway, waiting to see the small smile she gives me when I enter a room. It's imperfect, messy, entirely human. And somehow that's enough. I notice things now I never would have before. The subtle tension in her shoulders when she's carrying a heavy day, the way her eyes soften when she catches me looking. And she notices me, too. How I fidget with my jacket cuffs, the way I bite my lip when I'm unsure of words, the tiny hesitations that used to make me feel invisible. We see each other, fully, without pretense. I've learned that love doesn't always arrive in perfect moments. Sometimes it's in small, unremarkable spaces. The corner of a cafe, the hum of fluorescent lights in a hotel lobby, the brushing of hands as someone reaches for the same mug. And sometimes, it's in staying present, resisting the urge to fill every pause with words, letting silence speak the things that need to be felt rather than said. She has changed, too. I see her exhale more often, let herself linger in moments rather than immediately closing them off. There's still a guardedness, yes, but it's lighter now. Less of a wall, more of a threshold we've both learned to cross with care. We aren't perfect. We argue over trivial things, over who forgot the milk or left the window open. But when the storm passes, there's this understanding, an acknowledgement that whatever it is between us, it's worth the quiet effort, worth the patient navigation of our mismatched histories. And maybe that's what makes it real. Not the fireworks, not the grand declarations, but the everyday recognition that we're choosing this, over and over, even when it would be easier not to. I lean back in my chair now, looking out the window at the city lights reflected in puddles, and I realize how much we've grown, how much I've grown, through the slow, messy, beautiful unfolding of it all. There's gratitude in it, yes, but also this calm certainty that some connections, once formed, leave an indelible mark. Her laugh drifts across the room from the kitchen, and I smile without thinking. That small sound carries the weight of every awkward pause, every near miss, every unsaid word we navigated together. It's quiet. It's simple. It's enough. And maybe that's all love really is. Quiet, patient, earned, and seen. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?